And I don't even care if anyone calls me a Sally, because I'm a snail and I never gonna fail. And you know what? You're gonna have to bail me out of jail.
Legendary filmmaker Rob Reiner and his wife were blindsided inside their own home, the one place that is supposed to feel untouchable and safe. What happened did not involve a stranger or a break-in. It involved someone close, someone trusted, and it turned their entire world upside down. Rob spent decades telling stories about love, family, and connection. Yet his own life was quietly unraveling behind closed doors. His son, Nick Reiner, had long faced personal struggles that were already weighing heavily on the family. But no one imagined how intense things were about to become the night before everything collapsed. That narrative is completely falsified in every way. Investigators are now revisiting old comments Nick once made about his father, statements that feel eerie in hindsight. Those remarks suggest the warning signs were not sudden. They had been there, lingering beneath the surface long before things spiraled out of control. The heartbreaking incident involving Rob Reiner and his wife, Michelle Singer Reiner, unfolded on December 13, 2025, a night that was meant to be joyful, warm, and full of holiday spirit. Earlier that evening, the couple attended a Christmas party hosted by Conan O'Brien, surrounded by friends, familiar faces, laughter, and celebration. But beneath the festive lights and music, something felt off. Witnesses later told investigators that a heated argument erupted between Rob and Nick, instantly pulling attention away from the celebration. This was not a quiet disagreement whispered in a corner. It was loud, intense, and impossible to ignore. Voices were raised, tension filled the room, and guests exchanged uneasy looks as the argument escalated. Several people later described Nick's behavior as unsettling, saying it stood out in a way that stayed with them long after the party ended. Something about that moment did not sit right. One guest later told investigators that Nick had everyone on edge, a phrase that quickly spread as authorities began piecing together the hours leading up to what followed.
Sometimes I just come out to gather my sick thoughts.
Rob did not back away or escalate the situation. Instead, he faced it head-on, trying to steady things and keep control. Michelle stayed right by his side through it all. The two moved together, calm and united, refusing to let the moment explode in public. When they eventually left the party, it did not look dramatic or rushed. It felt deliberate, like parents choosing to handle something privately rather than let it play out in front of everyone. To those watching, it looked like two parents trying to protect their family and regain control of a situation that was slipping fast. Later that same night, Rob had a phone call with Eric Idle, and the tone was completely different. According to Eric, the conversation was light, upbeat, and focused on future creative plans, especially the long-awaited Spinal Tap sequel. There was no hint of panic, stress, or fear in Rob's voice. He sounded motivated, hopeful, and fully focused on what was coming next. But in quieter moments before that night, Rob had confided something deeply unsettling to a few close friends. He admitted he was scared of his own son. This was not said in anger or frustration. It came from real fear from a parent who felt helpless watching behavior he could not control. That private worry would soon take on much heavier meaning once they returned home later that night. In the early hours of December 14th, something devastating unfolded inside the Reiner home in Brentwood. The Los Angeles District Attorney's Office later confirmed the incident occurred before sunrise, though the exact moment could not be precisely determined. By around 3 p.m., concern turned into alarm. Their daughter, Romy Reiner, who lived across the street, went to check on them after repeated attempts to reach them failed. The moment she entered the house, she knew something was very wrong and immediately called for help. Paramedics and LAPD officers rushed to the scene, and both Rob and Michelle were found unresponsive. Authorities quickly secured the home and launched a full-scale investigation, treating the situation as a serious domestic case from the very start. One detail immediately changed everything. There were no signs of forced entry anywhere. Doors and windows were intact, untouched, and undisturbed.
They know the David who go on stage, who has his ways about him, but, they really want to know what's inside.
That pointed to one chilling conclusion. Whoever was responsible did not break in. They were already inside or were welcomed in willingly. Neighbors were questioned, but no one reported hearing anything unusual that night. No alarms, no shouting, no chaos. In a quiet Brentwood neighborhood where sound travels easily, that silence felt disturbing in itself. Investigators noted that whoever moved through the home did so quietly and deliberately. There was no mess, no visible struggle, just controlled movement, the kind only someone familiar with the space could manage. As detectives reconstructed the timeline, attention quickly turned to Nick Reiner. According to police records, Nick left the house shortly after the incident and arrived at the Pierside Hotel in Santa Monica around 4 a.m. on December 14th. Hotel staff later told officers his behavior appeared completely normal. He checked in calmly, spoke clearly, and showed no visible signs of distress. No panic, no shaking, no confusion. However, after Nick checked out, investigators searched the hotel room and reportedly found evidence that directly connected him to what had occurred at the Brentwood home. That single discovery placed him squarely inside the investigation's critical timeline. His stay at the hotel was brief. Within hours, he was gone again, moving fast, like someone who did not want to stay in one place too long. Later that day, surveillance footage captured Nick at a gas station near Exposition Boulevard and Vermont Avenue. Cameras showed him walking in casually, grabbing a drink, paying, and leaving without hesitation. He did not appear rushed or nervous. Everything about his demeanor seemed calm, controlled, and ordinary. That calm stood in sharp contrast to what investigators believed had already taken place. By around 9:15 p.m. on December 14th, police located him near Exposition Park, just steps from the University of Southern California campus. Patrol cars surrounded the area in a tense but controlled operation unfolding in front of bystanders. Nick did not resist. He did not run. He stayed quiet and followed every instruction officers gave him. Within minutes, Nick was taken into custody without resistance. No struggle. No dramatic scene. Just silence and handcuffs snapping shut.
The geniuses, the brilliant ones, the people, I'm referring to myself.
By the end of that night, investigators were no longer guessing. They were connecting dots that painted a disturbing pattern across Los Angeles: a heated argument, an eerily silent home, no signs of forced entry, a quick disappearance, and a strange trail stretching from Brentwood to Santa Monica and beyond. Still, one question refused to fade. What actually happened inside that house? That is when the case shifted into a darker, more complex phase. Once the Brentwood home was secured, forensic teams stepped in, methodical and relentless, determined to uncover what witnesses and neighbors could not explain. Every room, every surface, every detail was examined with precision. Next came the most critical task: locking down the timeline. With no cameras inside the house and no clear timestamps, investigators had only science to rely on: temperature readings, physical indicators, microscopic traces. Nothing was overlooked. One chilling question guided every step. When did Rob and Michelle Reiner lose their lives, and how did it truly unfold? To answer that, investigators focused on physical markers left behind. Muscle stiffening and blood settling patterns became key clues. Once the heart stops, these signs help forensic experts estimate how long someone has been gone. In this case, the results were haunting. The medical examiner concluded that both Rob and Michelle passed away in the early morning hours, nearly 12 hours before they were discovered. That timing aligned perfectly with what detectives already suspected based on movements and witness accounts. The tragedy unfolded during the quietest stretch of the night, when the neighborhood was asleep and unaware that anything was wrong. That silence was not just eerie, it was crucial to understanding how everything happened without interruption. Then the investigation turned to the injuries themselves. Forensic specialists documented multiple sharp force injuries, a technical term for wounds caused by a sharp-edged object. These were not distant or accidental. They were delivered from close range, face to face, within arm's reach, requiring repeated motion.
we're close to making a deal that will, of course, make him the worldwide star that he deserves to be.
50 million on the line, and they were like practically just jacking me off the whole time.
What stunned investigators was not only the nature of the injuries, but the number of them. The evidence showed it did not end quickly. It went on longer than expected, displaying an intensity that shocked even seasoned forensic experts. This was not a single moment of chaos. It reflected sustained action. From a legal standpoint, repetition matters. Investigators do not speculate emotionally, they interpret evidence. And in this case, the findings pointed strongly toward intent, a decision to continue rather than stop. Following those conclusions, Nick Reiner was formally charged with 2 counts of first-degree homicide, 1 for each parent. In California, first-degree charges represent the most serious classification, reserved for cases believed to involve deliberate action. Prosecutors did not stop there. They added special circumstances due to multiple victims, a designation that immediately elevated the case to the highest legal tier possible. This was not symbolic. It reshaped everything about how the case would move forward. With special circumstances attached, the potential consequences became the harshest allowed under the law. If convicted, Nick could face life in prison without parole or the most extreme penalty available, depending on how the court proceeds. The Los Angeles District Attorney's Office made it clear this was the strongest charge they could bring. Their statement signaled full confidence in the forensic findings and the legal foundation behind the accusations. At that point, the case officially shifted from tragedy into one of the most intense legal battles the city had seen in years. Investigators now had a locked timeline, a clear sequence, a confirmed cause, and evidence of close, sustained contact. When Nick appeared before a judge for the first time, the weight of it all hit instantly. The rigid courtroom, the silence, even the plain clothes he wore sent shockwaves through everyone present. This was not a routine appearance. It was a turning point. On the morning of December 17, 2025, Nick Reiner was escorted into a Los Angeles courtroom for his initial hearing. Until then, the case had lived only through reports and official statements. Now it entered the public legal arena. From that moment forward, every word spoken became part of the permanent record. The courtroom was locked down tightly. No cameras. No live feed. No broadcast coverage of any kind. Only a small group of reporters, attorneys, and court officials were allowed inside to witness it firsthand. Those restrictions were not accidental. They were in place before Nick entered and remained firm throughout the session, underscoring just how serious the case had become. When the doors finally opened and Nick Reiner stepped inside, sheriff's deputies guided him straight to the defense table.
My mouth is getting a little parched because of how much I'm talking to y'all, but this...
Anyway, we really haven't really delved into anything deep.
As he entered, the room fell completely silent. Every footstep, every glance, every movement suddenly felt heavy. This was not just the start of a legal process. It was the moment the quiet mystery of Brentwood officially turned into a courtroom showdown. Almost instantly, people noticed what Nick was wearing, a harm prevention smock, the kind used in high-risk custody situations. It was visible, unmistakable, and impossible to ignore. Yet, strangely, no one said a word about it. The judge did not acknowledge it. The attorneys did not mention it. The hearing continued as if it were not there. That silence spoke louder than any comment could. As the session began, the courtroom settled into complete stillness. The charges were read aloud in cold, clinical legal language, 2 counts of first-degree homicide, 1 tied to his father and 1 to his mother. No emotion. No explanation. Just the weight of the law dropping line by line. When the judge asked if he understood his rights, Nick answered with a short, calm confirmation. That was it, the only time he spoke during the entire hearing. No plea. No questions. No visible reaction to the gravity of the accusations. He sat motionless, eyes forward, expression flat, sealed off, contained, unreadable. After the charges were read, the hearing shifted to logistics. Nick's defense attorney requested a delay of the arraignment to allow more time before entering any plea. The judge agreed without hesitation and set a new court date for January 7, 2026. The prosecution did not object. No arguments. No fireworks. Just procedure moving forward. By the end of the hearing, one thing was clear. This case was only beginning. The tension inside that courtroom said more than any statement ever could. Then another detail struck observers hard. Standing beside Nick was his defense attorney, Alan Jackson. The name alone carried serious weight inside legal circles. Jackson was not a routine hire. He was a courtroom heavyweight known for handling high-profile cases under relentless public scrutiny. Over the years, he had represented some of the most controversial figures imaginable, including Kevin Spacey, Harvey Weinstein, and Karen Red. That choice sent a clear signal. This was not a placeholder defense or a short-term strategy. It was calculated, deliberate, and built for a long fight. It told everyone watching that Nick's legal team was preparing for deep scrutiny, endless filings, and a drawn-out battle where every detail would be challenged line by line. As the hearing wrapped up, Nick was escorted out the same way he came in, silent, guarded, and without a single glance toward the press. No statements were made, not by prosecutors and not by the defense. Inside the courtroom, reporters whispered and scrambled to process what they had just witnessed. Minutes later, the room was nearly empty again. Outside those walls, the real buzz exploded fast. By that afternoon, attention shifted to one burning question that refused to go away: who was paying for this defense? Legal insiders understood the reality. A case involving 2 first-degree homicide charges with special circumstances could stretch on for years. These cases require expert witnesses, deep forensic reviews, and endless pretrial motions. The costs pile up quickly. Millions can vanish before a trial ever begins. Estimates suggested that mounting a defense of this caliber could easily exceed $1 million before a jury was even selected. Nick Reiner had no known active career or income stream that could explain how such a massive legal bill was being covered. That gap sparked immediate speculation. Rumors spread quickly across media circles. Some insiders quietly suggested that money connected to the Reiner family estate could be footing the bill, adding yet another unsettling layer to a case that already refused to slow down. Almost immediately, new questions exploded. People asked whether it was even legal to use family-linked funds for a defense like this. Estate law experts weighed in quickly, explaining that the issue is not simple. In some cases, shared or inherited assets can be used for legal costs. In others, doing so can trigger disputes, legal challenges, or objections from surviving family members. The rules depend entirely on how assets are structured and who controls them. Inside the courtroom, none of this was addressed. The judge did not ask where the money came from. The defense did not volunteer any explanation. Officially, the issue stayed off the record. Outside, emotions boiled. Some argued every person deserves the strongest defense possible. Others were deeply unsettled by the idea that family-linked resources might protect the accused. Even within the Reiner family, sources claimed things were far from settled. Some relatives reportedly hoped Nick would receive serious mental health treatment alongside the criminal process. To them, this was not just about charges. It was about years of unresolved issues finally exploding. Still, none of these reports were officially confirmed. No filings. No sworn statements. Nothing verifiable. The prosecution's position never changed. They remained firm that the evidence supported the most serious charges available. They pointed to the severity of what happened and Nick's movements afterward, arguing that both met the legal threshold. Because the case involved more than one victim, sentencing options were already extremely limited. If convicted, Nick Reiner faced only 2 outcomes under the law: permanent incarceration with no chance of release, or the most extreme punishment the system allows. There were no reduced options. Meanwhile, the case continued evolving quietly behind the scenes. Detectives reviewed details. Attorneys refined strategies. Information not yet public circulated among those closest to the investigation. Everyone involved knew the next phase would be heavier. The courtroom may have looked calm, but beneath the surface, pressure was building fast. Attention soon shifted to something Nick had said long before the case reached court, words that now carried new weight. Nick had spoken openly about his childhood, admitting he never felt truly close to his father. He described an emotional distance that shaped how he saw himself within the family. He said he often felt like an outsider in his own home, watching others connect while he stood on the edge, unsure how to fit in. By all accounts, Rob was a devoted and present father. But long work hours and success can create emotional gaps without intention. Nick later admitted that care did not always reach him. That isolation followed him into adulthood. Drawn toward escape rather than structure, substance use entered his life. What began small spiraled quickly. By his mid-teens, his struggles required professional treatment. The family sought help repeatedly. Moments of progress gave hope. Setbacks shattered it again and again. Nick drifted across states, Maine, New Jersey, Texas, without stability. Through it all, Rob and Michelle never gave up. They invested time, love, patience, resources, and second chances. In 2015, Rob even brought Nick into filmmaking with Being Charlie, based on Nick's struggles. For a moment, stability returned. But it did not last. Old patterns resurfaced. Concern turned into fear. By the time of the Christmas party, the tension was years in the making. That argument was not random. It was a breaking point. In the days that followed, Romy and Jake Reiner released a joint message focused only on grief, shock, and love. They asked for privacy and have remained silent since. A private memorial followed. No cameras. No spectacle. Across Hollywood, tributes poured in for Rob Reiner, not just for his work, but for who he was. Now the question turns to you. What do you think really happened? Do you believe Nick Reiner is responsible, or is there more to this story? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you found this breakdown valuable, like the video and subscribe for more deep dives into major Hollywood cases.